Hi, welcome to session 12 in our Getting Focused Running and Fitness series. Today it's forward thinking and looking ahead. So today we just want to spend a little bit of time talking about starting to look forwards and starting to think about how we can use the time now that we've got to start giving ourselves some good foundations and building blocks towards what we want to do in the future. And it's not just about when we're talking about the future next month or next week or the week after that. We're talking about longer term sort of planning, because we generally find that we very much focus on where we are now and what's happening next week and what's happening the week after and things like that, and we take our eye very much off what we could be doing in a year's time or 2 years time, and we tend to vastly overestimate what we can do in the short time period, but underestimate what we could do in a year to 2 or 3 years time as well. So I think it's quite useful to have that longer term outlook. It also helps take our mind away from what we're obviously going through at the moment, and start to looking forwards into 18 months time or something like that. Can help just give us that bit of perspective.
It's hard for people to do because we don't have that immediate buzz or energy that we get from something that we're going to do next week or the week after, and thinking ahead can sometimes feel like, well, it's never going to get here. But if you can get into that mindset of thinking that far ahead, it helps you focus on what you're doing now and make it more meaningful as well.
Yeah. And I don't think it needs to be an ongoing thing that you constantly looking ahead, because that almost conflicts what we were talking about last week about being present and being aware of the situation you're in now and everything. But it's good to every now and then just sit down and think about it and look at it and say, well, what do I need to do to get there? And then you're going to take the right steps, sort of go into that direction. And as far as from a running and training point of view, if we look at, we're very spoilt now, or we have been very spoilt, where there's races every weekend, and we can do events all of the time. But with that, we don't have any seasonal training. And if you look at other sports, my sport that I came from when I was younger and when I was in the army was mountain biking, and it was very seasonal. You didn't have many races at all through the winter, it was all through the summer. So your winter was spent doing seasonal training, your preparation, your foundation work and things like that. So you had to find other ways of motivating you as well to do the training and things like that. And I feel like now we're in a similar position where we're kind of in an off season, and now is the good time to do a lot of the base work that we need to do to then launch ourselves into a season of doing events and things, but well prepared. And if you look at, there's a really good triangle diagram that I'll try and put up on the video. And it shows, like an athlete or, professional, it doesn't have to be professional, it can be anybody, but a training triangle that shows at the top of that triangle is your sort of peak of what you're trying to achieve as far as the event you're doing, and at the bottom you've got a big wide base. So all of the stuff at the top of there is your event specific training. So the closer you get to an event, then the more time you spend at the top of that triangle. And if we're always doing events, then we're spending all of our time at the top of this triangle, and it'll only allow our peak to ever get so high. Whereas actually, if we can spend more time doing the foundation, the fundamental work at the bottom, then that gives us a much stronger base to build from. And the thinking is sometimes that the wider your base, the higher you can get your top of your triangle, so the better you can peak. And that doesn't have to be necessarily performance related, as far as I'm going to win a race or I'm going to get the fastest ever time or anything like that. It's relative to you and what your kind of goals are as well. So your goals might be different to that, which is okay. So I think just keeping that in mind, as far as you need time to do fundamental and foundation stuff to be able to then add on the event specific stuff later on.
And this is something that we sort of see and hear a lot. You get this conflicting thing of, well, I don't really want to compete and I don't mind. I like racing all the time. It's what makes me happy. But on the flip side, often people that race all the time will go, oh, I didn't do as well in that race as I wanted to. Or if I'd have done X, I could have shaved a few minutes off here. And that's kind of where we have to start to be a bit more honest with ourselves. Some people will be perfectly happy to just race every weekend and not worry about results and not let it bother them or anything like that, and not worry about how they're feeling and not get injured and stuff like that. But that's a few people. That's like a handful of people.
Even if that's what you want to do,
yeah.
Then if you start getting slower and slower, or you get injured, then that's obviously quite a demoralising thing to happen. And if you just do event-specific stuff all the time and races and races and races, that is what we do see happening, is you plateau and you just stay where you are, or you get to a point but then you slowly get slower and slower, or your body breaks down that much that you get injured.
So regardless of what you think you are, where you think you are in the scheme of athletic endeavour, it's always worth building that base, because if you want longevity in the sport, which I think most people do, you want to still be doing it when you're 70 something and not having lots and lots of trouble. Then constantly racing all the time and not really taking the time to prepare won't get you there. It'll slow you down.
And just looking ahead at longer term stuff anyway, even if you don't necessarily want to be better or get faster or anything, but actually whatever you're doing, whether it's running or growing stuff in your garden, for example, just having a sort of vision or an idea in your head of where you want it to be in 18 months' time can kind of give you a lot more perspective over what your lives are like at this point in time as well, and help steer you towards doing that. And
having that patience really makes things incrementally. You won't notice it happen, but things will improve and you will get more comfortable doing things that a few years ago you wouldn't have thought you were going to be comfortable with. So for example, we were talking about this earlier, we coach lots of different people for lots of different things, and some people come to us and say, I've got a race in 3 months, I need you to help me get there, and then they'll stop after the race is finished. And that's okay, but it's not getting the most out of themselves that they could possibly achieve. Whereas I've got a couple of people that I've been working with for over 2 years now, one person in particular who came to me and had a 3-year plan, and that was awesome, because we've taken him from where he was at the start, doing much shorter races, getting injured and niggles quite often, to now being able to comfortably churn out like a 5-hour run and be okay, whereas before that would have crippled him. So having that long-term vision has really helped him, and I know helped a lot of other people as well, just to get to this point now where he's like, yeah, I'll go and do 20 miles on a weekend, that's fine. And he hasn't really noticed it happening. So it is building up slowly like that is a much healthier way of doing it as well.
Yeah. I think, and at the moment, we're all in different situations right now, and we always are in different situations to each other. So it's quite hard to kind of, and probably not right really, to just sort of generalise. But if you are in a position where you are able, and we are seeing people's routines are much more consistent at the moment, then that is one of the key elements to developing any sort of area of your kind of physical development, and it's probably easier to do the fundamental foundation stuff when you've got that consistency, because it just becomes a routine, and it's kind of easy to do.
So we're going to recommend a book and a a book and a listen/watch today. So the book that I'm going to recommend is called Bounce by Matthew Syed. I'll show you it. I've only got it on Kindle. And it's a very easy book to spot. It's just got a big red tick on the front. So it's called Bounce, like bouncing a ball.
Okay.
So it's got a big red tick.
We'll put a link up for that as well.
So this book, some of you may have read it. A lot of it is to do with sports people and how they got as good as they got. So there's examples of the Roger Federer and the Williams sisters, chess masters, and how they got to the absolute top of their game. And a lot of it is based around the sort of 10,000 hour rule, which sort of states that you don't need innate talent, you just need a good work ethic, and to be able to put in consistent and purposeful work will get you to the top of your game regardless of who you are, which there are counter arguments to that as well, but this book is really useful for that argument. So not everyone's got 10,000 hours that they can put into their chosen sport. Very few people have. But the point of it is, you might not have all that time, but if you can spend the time that you've got practicing purposefully instead of kind of jumping from race to race and just doing lots of races without really training specifically for anything longer term, then you're not going to achieve the potential that you could possibly get to.
Yeah, because that 10,000 hours isn't
it's not.
10,000. That's 10,000 hours of purposeful training rather than just random stuff. And actually, if you spend 10,000 hours running with bad form or not doing it right, then you're going to get really, really good at doing that thing. Whereas I think the argument is 10,000 hours of doing it properly or doing it to the best that you can is then going to make more of an impact.
So the purposeful practice, everything has a purpose, and ideally, again, if you're aiming for something in a few years' time, it should all tie into that thing in a few years' time. And it might be a tiny step, miles and miles and miles away from that thing, but it's always working towards that thing. So if you're, like, for example, now there's a lot of stuff out there that you could pick and choose and do. There's classes everywhere, there's challenges all over the place. And I've done a couple of challenges this last couple of weeks in my running club, but they've been because they've fitted in with what I was doing anyway. So if you're throwing yourself into lots of different challenges just because they're there and because they're fun, to an extent, that's awesome, because if you're enjoying it, it's great. But if you're doing that all the time, just random stuff that's fun, you're going to enjoy it, it's going to be great, but are you going to make the gains and get to where you want to get to? So trying to do it with purpose and having an intention for everything you do is much more useful in the long term. The one thing that I picked a quote out of the book that I'm just going to read, and I would like you to have a little think about, because I think this is ace. The ascendancy of the mental and the acquired over the physical and the innate has been confirmed again and again. So if you can work on your head and learning these new skills and doing them over and over again, rather than just doing something well because you're big and strong or because you're lean and tall, or you've got a genetic makeup that means you're slightly better at it, but you don't really work at it, the hard worker will get there first, rather than the person that just looks like a runner but doesn't really do it purposefully. So yeah, if you're interested in that kind of area, there's lots of studies in this book, lots of really interesting examples, and not just from sport, about how that's proven to be true. So if you feel like, oh, I don't look like a typical runner, or I'm not ever going to be fast, think about how you can make your training and your practice more purposeful, and you will get to where you want to be for yourself. It's not about comparing yourself to other people.
Yeah. And even comparing yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
I've had a few discussions lately about, people saying, I feel like I'm going to lose all of my fitness because I'm not doing as much as I was doing, or I'm not doing the same as I'm doing, so I'm going to lose everything. But if you look at things from a longer term point of view, you're, and like him, going back to the 10,000 hours or whatever, or the 10, it can take 10 years for you to develop as, a good runner or a good athlete in whatever you're doing. So if you look at where you are in that 10-year process, then this moment or this period of time of, 2 or 3 months or whatever is actually a really small blip on all of that. So you're not going to lose all of that development that you've been doing over the last few years, or that might be coming in the next few years as well. So it's a very small, sort of blip in that timeline. Something else that we've talked about is how, using this time now to just focus on that foundation and building that foundation and doing these purposeful things, and identifying the things that you need to work on, because it's a good time to kind of work on those now, because you're not going to be measured on any of that as far as a race is concerned or anything like that either, but you can give yourself things to aim for, and that goes back to what I was talking about when I used to train for cycling and we used to have the off season. We used to do, like our own time trials and stuff like that, and we're seeing quite a lot of that now, which is quite nice to see, but you used to have your own personal sort of goals outside of racing. I think that's good to have, and it's sort of, to me, I've been going back to that recently, and it's quite a nice thing to do. Yeah,
so our running club, or again the people we're coaching, we've been looking at things like, let's go and do a mile and see where you are on the mile, or let's go and do a 5k and see where you are there, and then we'll work on that. And it doesn't have, even with the running club challenge, we're sort of pitting each other against each other, but really you can't, can you? Because we're all different ages, we're all different in different periods at the moment with work and things like that. We're all doing all these challenges on different routes. It's crazy to compare, but it's good fun to have a challenge that you can think, right, I'm going to aim for this for me, and then it'll just be a bit of fun with whoever you're against. It doesn't mean as much.
Yeah, and it's also about doing things that are within your control as well. I think that was quite an important thing that we found was, you might be working towards or thinking, there still might be a race in July or August, but it's unknown and it's all a bit up in the air. So it's out of your control. But what is in your control are things that you can do. You can do a time trial, at home, or you can set a loop up, or, not a loop around your garden, but a loop, if you are able to go outside and run and things like that as well. Or it might be just smaller targets, like setting yourself a target of, by 4 weeks time I want to do 50 press-ups in a row or something like that. So breaking it down, but making sure that being able to do 50 press-ups in a row fits in with what you want to be doing in 6, 7 or 8 months time. It probably will.
Yeah. Good for everything.
Yeah. The podcast / video that we're going to recommend as well is one that we watched this week. It's the Ginger Runner Live YouTube video. I don't know if they do that as a podcast. I'm not sure. I'll have a look. But anyway, it was an interview they did with David Roche, who's a really great coach over in the US. And I think that kind of summarises or puts into different words quite a bit about what we've talked about today. So it's just getting it from a different perspective. But yeah, I really like the way that he puts things, and he doesn't just go along with what everyone else is kind of saying. I think he's quite free thinking, and
it's not all just about the science, is it?
no. And he's also got a book called The Happy Runner, which again is a really good book as well. So you've got 3 things today. You've got 2 books and the Ginger Runner videos as well. That's all we're going to talk about, because we could probably talk about it for a lot longer. But I think it'd be nice for you to go away and have a think about that. If you have got any questions, obviously please let us know. Really appreciating the feedback that we're getting. We're getting a few nice messages, which, personal messages and stuff, which it makes it really worthwhile for us doing these videos. So we're really pleased it's helping people, and at least giving you something to think about as well. So is that everything, Kim?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Thanks very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe if you like the videos, and enjoy.